Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. There are now just 69 days left in the Trump presidency, but even though Joe Biden received at least 5 million more votes than Trump and counting, well, the former VP leads in key states by tens of thousands of votes. With all that, Trump still will not face reality. And to make matters worse, the president also won't come out of hiding. And he's not doing anything to deal with the COVID pandemic, which is, we'll tell you later, only going from bad to worse. He's also blocking a peaceful transition of power by refusing to cooperate with the incoming president. Plus, the vast majority of the Republican Party is basically complicit with their silence. But some cracks, at least a few, are forming. A handful of GOP senators, including Lindsey Graham and Chuck Grassley, they're saying that Biden should be allowed to start the transition and receive intelligence briefings. Even Karl Rove, even he agrees. President George W. Bush's chief strategist, who's now a talking head on Fox, well, he penned a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying this election result will not be overturned, so the president should do his part to unite the country by leading a peaceful transition and letting grievances go. I wouldn't hold your breath, Carl. NW's Chief of Staff, Andy Card, also agrees with Rove.
I signed an op-ed piece with John Podesta just in the last 24 hours, suggesting that the administration should move forward with the transition. We want a President Biden to be just as prepared as a President Trump to be in office on January 20th at noontime.
Now, the president, this current president, isn't doing anything to help Biden with that transition, but he is doing a lot of things at the Pentagon, and all of them very concerning. Defense Secretary Mike Esper, he was fired on Monday, and within hours, his chief of staff, top officials overseeing policy and intelligence, they either quit or they were shown the door. And more purges are expected. The departures, they're bad, and who's replacing them, arguably, I wouldn't even say arguably, definitely much worse. One of these new folks, retired General Anthony Tata. He's now acting Undersecretary of Defense. His confirmation for a top post at the Pentagon, it was rejected by the Republican-controlled Senate. The reason? A series of tweets he authored, including one where he called Islam, quote, the most oppressive, violent religion I know of, he said, and he also called President Obama a terrorist leader. Again, this guy's own words. Retired four-star General Barry McCaffrey, he's just one of many big-name military leaders who are now speaking out.
I've been shot at a lot, been nearly killed a bunch of times. I'm not an alarmist. I try and stay cool under pressure. Mark me down as alarmed. That team moving in, no one in his right mind would have accepted an appointment for 90 days. These people are in there to control a coercive institution of U.S. democracy. Watch out.
I want to bring in our guest now, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democrat from Maryland. Senator, I know you said the president's not accepting the election results and delegitimizing it altogether is, quote, downright dangerous. We just heard General McCaffrey say what's going on at DOD right now is downright scary. Do you think this is just some part of a retribution tour, or do you think it's something worse, that they might actually be up to something nuts?
Well, we don't know, but either way, this is risky for our national security. When you replace the top leadership at our national security agencies and replace them with political hacks and political lackeys, you create a dangerous situation. During these peaceful transfers of power, we have, tried to ensure steady handoff. But here you have an administration that is wreaking havoc right to the end, and you can be sure that our adversaries will look for any openings. Beyond that, you've got the fact that they are, denying President-elect Biden access to the daily intelligence briefings. I recognize that, Donald Trump has not paid much attention to those, but I know that President Biden will. And that's just the beginning of the list of things they're doing now that are really going to damage our country and our democracy in the weeks ahead.
Senator Langford, a Republican, said that if by Friday Biden doesn't get the briefings, he'll step in. And of course, he couched it at the end with all the caveats for the president. That said, though, I know it's hard because you guys aren't all in Washington together, but do you get the sense that there is a point where Republicans will say, okay, enough here. We got to get on with the business of government and national security. Are we close to that? Or do you see no sign that until Trump basically acknowledges reality, they'll go that next yard?
Yeah, I'm afraid to say, and I have talked to some of our Republican colleagues in recent days, that they are so beholden to Donald Trump and so fearful that he will tweet something out attacking them and unleash his supporters on them, that they won't do anything really without his green light. And when I say anything, recognize that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won this election. They may make other, statements, partial statements, but sadly, and this is a really bad reflection on where the Republican Party now is, they're unwilling to state the obvious, which is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won this election, and the president's narrative of, that he won and all these claims of fraud are a bunch of nonsense. But as far as I can tell, it's going to take some time before they will publicly acknowledge reality.
I speak, I think, for so many people where we just want some return to normalcy here. It's so exhausting, Senator. But I think for the folks out there who say, well, as soon as Biden finally gets in, with the amount of time that he spent in the Senate, he's got a working relationship with McConnell. McConnell, will put country before party and he'll play ball. So many people have said, where have you been? Do you remember McConnell in the Obama years? He said his number one goal was to make sure he didn't get reelected. We all remember what happened to Merrick Garland. McConnell today is still supporting Trump not accepting the results of the election. What should our expectations be when Biden finally gets sworn in as to how much of partners across the aisle they'll find? I know we don't have the special election results till January in Georgia, but will there be any rationality returning to the Senate, or am I dreaming?
Well, I know Joe Biden intends to reach out. I know that he means to work with Mitch McConnell and bring the country together. But as you indicated, he needs a partner in Mitch McConnell. And count me skeptical based on everything Mitch McConnell has done to date, including trying to sabotage the success of the Obama-Biden administration, including, breaking his own rules recently to install a Supreme Court justice after the vote had started in the presidential race. Mitch McConnell has shown time and again that obstruction is in his DNA. I hope we can overcome it, but we need to go into this clear-eyed. I am glad Joe Biden is going to make the effort. I think the American people want us to work together. I'd like to work together, but Mitch McConnell has demonstrated that he always puts partisan politics and power before the national interest, and we'll see.
So this is where I don't know how, what's the solution to this problem, but it seems to the uneducated observer when you watch that guys like yourself and your colleagues on one side of the aisle will see a crisis, take obviously the amount of millions of Americans hurting, and you need to have a second stimulus here. And then they'll look on the other side of the aisle, and McConnell will look and say, well, you guys are going to blink first because you're going to say, I'll take something rather than nothing because, in the end, you guys don't sign up for obstruction to the same degree. And I heard Joe Manchin, your colleague, say, listen, we're not going to pack the courts even if we get 50. We're not going to, try and give statehood to D.C. or to Puerto Rico. We're not going to rethink here basically a whole host of policies that people might think extreme. But is it almost that you two guys are playing by two different sets of rules, Republicans one and you the other? And until you guys go on offense, we're going to have the same kind of problem as long as you have a split Senate?
Well, look, you're talking about two different issues here. We do need to win these Georgia Senate races. That would, of course, give the Democrats the majority in the Senate. We would have the gavel. We'd be able to control the agenda. And look, I appreciate the comments of my colleague, Senator Manchin, but we have we have differences on some of these big issues within the Democratic caucus, we would have a discussion and have to hash them out. But in the meantime, we would like to move during this lame duck session to provide urgent relief to the American people. We see the COVID-19 pandemic raging. Donald Trump is golfing. More Americans are dying. The economy, while it's improved, the improvement is slowing down. It's decelerating. More long-term unemployment. So we need to get together and put together a plan. As we know, the House passed the Heroes One Act 6 months ago and has since passed additional measures. So, this is a moment where you would hope Mitch McConnell would put this partisanship aside after the election and work for the good of the country. But so far, we've not seen indications he's really going to do that.
In the lower chamber, you've started to see some fingers getting pointed from the progressive to the moderates as to who should shoulder some of the blame or more of the blame from what happened in November. Is that a healthy conversation, or right now there's just no time for too much soul searching here? The party's got to get on the same page.
Well, first, let's not forget the very good news, the great news from this election, which is we're going to end our 4-year national nightmare of Donald Trump. We're going to have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House starting January 20th. So let's focus for a second on the good news. Yes, all of us are disappointed that we don't have a Democratic majority yet in the United States Senate. We're going to fight really hard in Georgia, and that could change the balance. And obviously, the House Democrats had hoped to do better in these elections. Look, my view is it's very healthy to have these post-election discussions. They need to be based on facts and data. And I really think we've got to sift through the results, look carefully at where people won, where they lost, before drawing any sweeping conclusions. Again, I end here with the fact that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won.
Senator, I really appreciate the time tonight. Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
All right, let's bring in senior political correspondent Andrew Whitman. And Andrew, this delusion and this clinging to these conspiracy theories we're hearing from the grand old party and their enablers, I remember there was different approaches taken, and you don't have to go back that far in American history, just 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with normalcy now.
We're certainly not, Rich, on a number of different levels. This probably isn't going to shock anybody watching tonight, but these folks are singing a different tune this go-round. Last night we went through how much larger Joe Biden's win was compared to Donald Trump's in 2016. Biden has a lead of 5.2 million votes and growing. Trump lost the popular vote 4 years ago by almost 3 million votes. Biden's going to finish with the same electoral count that Trump won in 2016, and Biden's lead in Pennsylvania, the state that put him over the top, is more than 50,000 votes. That's larger than Trump's 44,000 vote win in Pennsylvania 4 years ago. All those facts have been reported accurately by the news side at Fox, but the message doesn't seem to have reached their opinion talkers.
So what's going to happen is they're going to have their recount, and then let's just hope they accept that Donald Trump was elected. The big question is whether or not this is so widespread, and Brian, you used that word a moment ago, widespread, to overturn an entire election.
If there's every election that doesn't need a recount, it is this one. What about the arrogance of people saying the president can't get a recount or can't look into allegations?
Somehow Donald Trump was not the duly elected president of the United States. This is all a distraction. In closer, particularly contentious races, Democrats, more so than Republicans, seem to have a problem conceding defeat. I love these legal challenges because we have to get to the bottom of all of this and expose fraud.
All right. Well, it's been some time since we've seen an actual transition. We have to go all the way back to 2008 for one that didn't involve Donald Trump. Successful transitions tend to share two key traits: an outgoing president who remains focused on critical matters at hand, and one who consults with and even works with the incoming president-elect. In 1976, President Gerald Ford offered whatever assistance he could to Jimmy Carter, and Ford kept on working. He proposed, believe it or not, that Puerto Rico become a state after he lost the election. He also continued to fight the key economic challenge of the moment, inflation. Carter was so grateful to Ford for his assistance that when Ford came back to the Oval that March, Carter said to Ford, quote, "You got me off to a good start." 1980, Carter to Reagan, 180 degrees apart on policy, and actually words of insults traded between the first ladies. But Carter kept working to free the 52 American hostages in Iran. There's no evidence that the two teams worked together, though rumors to that end have persisted. But their different approaches may have prompted Iran to release the hostages within minutes of Reagan becoming president. 2008, George W. Bush was as accommodating as any president has ever been with Barack Obama. He offered to let Obama attend a G20 economic summit as president-elect. Obama declined. But Bush actually brought Obama team members in to discuss what to do with the auto industry. You'll recall it was at the height of the recession. They didn't come up with a unified plan, but the experience of working together helped prepare the Obama team to deal with the crisis on day one. And Rich, if there's a parallel to where we are today, it's COVID. And having some skin in the game for the Biden team, or at least access to the numbers.
And I remember, Andrew, when you say that, in fact, it was a defining moment of the campaign because both McCain and Obama sat in on the room, and for all attendees, and the story of course got out, Obama had concise, insightful questions in terms of the economic consequences for the cascading recession and then what would have to happen. Mm-hmm. This was in the debate. And McCain didn't. And for people in the room, including from the then Bush administration, they said this guy's going to be more ready on day one. But the idea that they were given access to it, it speaks volumes.
I mean, imagine walking in.
Think COVID, you did a perfect example.
Yeah.
Now, do you think it would be in the American self-interest? Bring the Biden team in, hear all the facts from the task force. They might have their own plan, but let them hear open discussions about the problems they're hearing on the ground instead of walking in day one. But in your compilation clip of the before and the after, the 16 and the 20, that final comment, where she says, expose fraud. Well, talk about exposing them as a fraud, to be literal, the comments that she made then versus now. I mean, come on, Laura Ingraham talking about ridiculous.
I was also struck by how simple their arguments were in 2016. Hey, you got more votes, they're just not conceding. Versus 2020, all sort of painfully drawn out, and if we get this and we find this person and we need to expose this, it's just, you know, Occam's razor, the simplest solution is usually the correct one. We're seeing that just in the explanations, both in 16, but also now from the Democrats.
And it's more obvious now than it was even 4 years ago. I mean, talk about a self-own.
And it's all because of Donald Trump's ego. I mean, I think most Republicans, even most of the talkers on Fox, for the good of the country would go there, but they can't, like, it's not some policy difference. It's not a disputed election. It's because Donald Trump will get angry.
Unbelievable. Andrew, thank you. Yeah. We come back, everybody. We'll have an update when it comes to COVID cases, hospitalizations hitting record-breaking numbers, and more than 1,000 Americans dying each and every day. Things, I know they're bad, but it is getting to a point where a new phrase has been coined by one of the coronavirus advisors on the Hill. It's called COVID hell. The very latest we'll have after the break.